but I'm number
where are you?
50,960. I passed 2,000 people yesterday.
That's incredible. How many points did you get yesterday?
Like 140.
It would, if 140 got you 2,000 and then you're starting getting into the upper echelon, I would start to assume that more points ends up jumping you up.
Yeah, but because the points get harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I looked up some of the points I need, and like I get 10 points if I go complete the entire post Moogle quest line. And it's like that's a Moogle. I know what that's gonna mean. That's gonna be 100 quests. All right, we have 9 seconds until they come back from the ad break because I knew you were coming. I'm gonna go get some water. Be right back. 9 seconds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And hey, good morning, everybody. Why, thanks, Agent. Good morning, all warriors of light. Like, I don't, my allergies are either kicking my butt today. Like, my eye is like a little bit watery here or something like that. But like, I went to my men's group this morning, and legitimately, I'm like I'm still like feeling like I'm kind of trying to wake up. I think I got some.
I thought you had like a group thing this morning.
I did. I went to my men's group, and I was like, we were doing it. I was like, man, I just had some coffee, and it's like
it's just a bunch of dudes touching their faces,
just slapping their faces. Oh my goodness! So still sleepy. That's a good sleep last night. We lost Chris.
Yeah, that was intentional.
Ah, yes. Let's see here. Bum. Let's see. Morning. All.
Some days I'm just misty. Some days I'm super crisp. I think I'm mistier in whatever this software is. It's frosty. Is that crisper? I mean, it's worse, but is it crisper?
And posted. Crispy.
I don't know, man.
A gaming mouse for Christmas. That sounds amazing. I got a gaming mouse. I just still play on controller though. Oh, Mix, what's up? Thank you guys for all that you do, and thank you so much for the $5 super chat over here on YouTube. Man, my eye looks so watery. Like I'll have to look at that. Like I'll have to look at Chris like this.
That's better.
Switch camera angles today or something like that. Because I'm like,
better.
Why is this watery?
Thank you guys.
I got
the super chats over on YouTube have really been adding up. It's been incredible.
Oh yeah. not to kick a hornet's nest, but that 70-30 split on the YouTube side. Mwah.
Yeah.
And it's 480p. Chris is what chat's saying over here. Like he looks clear. He looks clear.
I look frosty, like I'm on a soap opera.
Someone's gonna like screenshot this and be like, "Here's Brian crying again."
Did you see that we have a?
You see what you got cut off?
We got 100 bits from Swan. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Swan.
I don't know if I actually got that one uploaded. I think I did. I think there's one of you crying.
Well, yeah, that's not hard to find.
Oh no, you're really losing it. Somewhere. Yeah, right. I think it's for I think it's for something that doesn't happen that often. So
Agent 00 Snake just got their Steam Deck last Friday. I've been having a blast with it. Absolutely. Haven't tried 14 on it though yet. That's actually, I just hit Omni 90 yesterday, guys. So every job is leveled, and it feels as satisfying as I thought I was expecting it to feel in that regards. You know, it basically is, it's a way of saying like, I'm glad it's done, but my goodness, that was hard. I don't know why Omni 90 was a lot harder than Omni 80.
Well, how did you do it? What were you using as your source of experience?
Everything, like anything that like depends on how much time I had to have to play. So generally speaking, it was leveling roulette and the Beast Tribe dailies. And
Okay.
if I, that's if I had
No, that's great.
20
Those are
minutes to
good.
play. Well, if I like 20 minutes to play,
Okay. I just
that's
didn't want you to be
priority
like, yeah, I just did it all in Crystalline Conflict. It's like, well, no wonder it sucked. Like,
no,
like Crystalline Conflict's really fun, but as a source of experience, it's a quarter of what leveling roulette does for you.
Yeah. The so it really was always about like how much time. So 20 minutes or less, leveling the roulette, and then the Beast Tribe dailies. That was always priority one. If I had more time, I'd do the frontline roulette and then the alliance roulette. And then essentially those are kind of the 4 key pillars. I did some time in the Bosnia and Zadnor, and I actually really liked that, but I didn't spend all that much time because that usually ended up feeling like a little bit more of a time commitment. It really just kind of depended. And then having finished it, I finished it on a trial because I had I was 89 and I got all the way and I just needed like 100K experience, and so I just queued up for a trial and we ended up finishing it with not Rathalos, but with what's his name, the sword guy from Heavensward.
Thornton?
No,
That's a trial, right?
the bug guy.
Oh, Ravana.
Ravana, thank you. I was like, turned up his music and kind of and was able to see all those achievement points pop up back to back to back. So I was like, yeah, I got some some of them achievements. So that felt satisfying. But yeah, Steam Deck helped out massively. Steam Deck was a huge help in terms of getting me down to 90.
Let's see where you're at now. So you were number 84,000 globally, but now you're Omni 90. So let's go see how many people you passed. You were 84.4.
Okay.
I think it may already have you at Omni.
Sync now.
Yeah, I think that's what you're at. Okay, so it brought you to 84.4. I don't know what you were before that.
Cool.
And you're in the top 2,000 on Sargatanas.
Woohoo!
Cool.
So, Agent, congrats on your Steam Deck. 14, I think, plays great on the deck. And that's where it's like...
You have almost half the minions, man. You could make a push. You're at 46%.
Woohoo! Yeah, send me this link. I know I keep seeing you pull it up, but that's something where it's like, let's freaking go. Now we're entering into a new era of making my own fun in 14. So I think I have 6 of the controller guides left to work on. I want to get those finished. We have the Criterion stuff launching this next week, so I'm looking forward to stepping into that. But oh no, it's telling me that there's a low connection.
Oh, look who's the frosty one now. Oh,
like it looks good on this end.
Saying I'm all misty, but this guy going with the pixel filter.
What? Now it's back. Now it's good. Okay,
all
cool.
Right.
I was like, what the hell, Spectrum?
Christy, thank you so much for 2 months, by the way.
Would a Steam Deck be considered a console? What do you think, Chris? Is it a console?
Yeah. Yeah, because you're going to have PC players arguing that they're limiting hardware capabilities so that it can run on the Steam Deck, or they're limiting UI interface development choices so it can run on Steam Deck. Oh, it has to have less buttons so it can run on Steam Deck. Like the moment you get into that idea that because the top end of it is a lower hardware spec than PC, not minimum spec on PC, but the top end of PC, and because you have less buttons, people assume that it is there. Some people assume that it is therefore an inferior experience, and they therefore do not think those players should be valued as heavily.
If anybody
let
argues,
that take
if
really
anybody
slide out angrily, people don't receive that well.
If anybody,
hypothetically,
there's no.
I don't get into that stuff. You'd have to go follow Ginger Prime. He talks about it a lot.
Oh, that's so funny.
Not my thing.
Somebody record something. That's all right. Cement that into the lexicon. No, if anybody makes that argument about Steam Deck though, like I think that's a crazy argument to make, namely because it's not like Final Fantasy 14 is designed around the Steam Deck. Steam Deck is just like any kind of PC. It's an additive experience that, you know, can enhance if you choose or you know, etc. But it's like it's a PC spec machine, so I wouldn't argue that a Steam Deck is a console, but it is a form factor, and it's kind of that hybrid. It's kind of like blending the lines, right, between the two, because it is a PC that clearly like runs Steam games, assumed that they can.
I just think that typically when people are arguing against supporting consoles, they're arguing against anything that's going to continue anchoring the minimum spec.
Yeah.
Because what they really want to pull up minimum spec as well. They just don't want to punch their own community in the face. They're really saying, I spent a lot of money on a 3090 and you need to suck it up. You are holding my games back. Like that's what that comment comes across as to me. Like that yeah. You were saying, because otherwise, why do you care? Like, I'm having a great experience. You're having poor experience. Great. Solved it. Right. Somebody picking the slower lane in traffic than you, that doesn't bother you. You're like, haha, like it doesn't matter. But if you say, okay, because that person's driving slow, we're all driving slow, that's a different source of frustration. So anytime somebody's arguing for something not to be on console, it is because, in their opinion, or if it's exclusive to their console and they don't want it to be cross-platform, the only valid argument I can see is a selfish one that says, I believe that if there were dev resources out there to support that person, that would take away from my experience. And if it's not that argument, then like I literally don't see how it holds any water at all. Like that's the single best argument against it. And it is 100% purely selfish. It is not for the betterment of the devs. It is not like, I hope they can't sell the game to more people. Like it's not.
I hope more people aren't playing, so less money is funneled to the devs, so that my experience will ultimately, be diminished.
You want to see WoW on Game Pass. So what I would say is there's something weird about that because of the way ESO got folded in. It didn't get folded in its entirety.
Correct.
So I would not expect WoW to either. So it would not shock me if it's like, so right now you can subscribe to WoW and you can play all the way up to the current expansion without basically buying anything. I bet that portion gets folded into Game Pass and that acts as your subscription. And it's probably only Game Pass Ultimate since it's a PC game. Even if it comes to console, they may just leave it behind that wall regardless. Something like that. And then if you want access to the current expansion, you're still going to have to buy that. They may have sales from time to time when they push Game Pass where like Game Pass is offering Dragonflight at 20% off. But I believe there's still going to be a purchase portion to that.
Yeah. The
just based on ESO.
Interesting.
Based on having already watched them go down this road and acquire somebody for billions of dollars that had an MMO in place.
It'll be interesting to see because we've seen Game Pass numbers dip, right, in a little bit. So it's that, do they feel, and ESO does not require subscription to play. So it will be interesting to see if they look at that as a value add, or as a like play, like, hey, you can play everything but the expansion. Like, I don't know, like it's going to be an interesting evolution because they have this as a service and an option. And if they did enhance it, even if they ended up coming, because they have Game Pass Ultimate, the plus sign is also a very popular thing, because we kind of talked about, could they have Game Pass plus MMO, like just as a like, okay, yeah, for an additional $5 a month on your Game Pass, we'll throw in WoW, we'll throw in ESO Premium, like whatever. Yeah, exactly.
If you want all the sports games, there's like a premium, like adding like a stars package to your HBO. Like there's a premium way to like attach it to your Game Pass, and it extends.
It's included,
it extends
right now.
There's some that are not included, and they get
EA how they rolled out their service was always like a year later. Everything goes into the vault. So before Game Pass was a thing, EA had this like, hey, we're going to launch this thing, and then literally. And so
you get day and date if you pay extra.
No. You were always given like 10 hours that you could play it or purchase it. And then after that version is no longer the version, it gets added into it. And so when it got folded into Game Pass, it got folded in with that same mindset that it's like, you get the 10 hours that you can play these games, as a part of whatever. You get early access, and then you can choose to purchase it. But then in a year's time, it all gets added into the vault.
Okay.
So that just got folded into the Game Pass exactly how it existed pre-Game Pass. However, with EA looking to sell, it will be interesting to see like if it's like, hey, we just closed on Activision Blizzard and now EA is in the fold, or I do wonder if we'll see like Amazon pick them up or something like that, because when you say publicly we're looking to sell it, that sends a pretty clear message.
I don't know if Microsoft wants to put another purchase in play while this one's still going through all the legal battle, because even though it shouldn't affect it, you have to wonder if the various control boards that are like worrying if Activision Blizzard is anti-consumer, if they're like, hey, you're telling me as soon as I finish this meeting, you're going to ask for another one of these. Why don't we put the kibosh on all of this?
Yeah.
Like you have to wonder if they would. That hurts their ability to close on the Activision deal to start the EA one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would let that play out.
Because Phil Spencer said like we're still planning on buying more studios. That you have to when you have a service as Game Pass, because you gotta fill the pipe. Yeah, you gotta fill the
pipe. Because when I open it up now, there's only like 2 to 3 games at a time I want to play.
Yeah.
As opposed to when we first got it, it was like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Like if you've never had Game Pass, it'll still blow your mind. But like I've worked my way through a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of games that were on that, like, I was interested, I didn't want to buy it. And it's all in there.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since that like first little bit, I don't know if they're still doing that like dollar thing, but that first like 13 months of mine or something was like $1. Like, oh, okay. Well, exactly. That was really easy.
All right. Are we ready to kick this off into high gear?
I assumed we were already filming.
We are filming. We just haven't. Let's see here. Let me add the overlays. Let's see here.
I just assumed we were already live.
There we go. Add this. Boop.
Oh. Fridays this month, I want to play simulation games. Today, I'm going to actually have to bail because we have family coming into town, and I have to finish my YouTube stuff. I can't just work late into the night like I was going to.
Yeah. So. I'll be live tonight with some New World, but today we've got 2 topics. We're going to be talking about Final Fantasy 14 crossovers that we'd like to see, and then we're going to lead into the main topic for today's show. Should MMOs even exist on consoles? This has been a topic, and this is actually beyond just Final Fantasy 14, but obviously Final Fantasy 14 being a console MMO would seem kind of weird to be like, they should delete it off of PlayStation. So we'll be talking about that. So feel free to guys weigh in with your thoughts, especially as we talk about specs and more. There's been some heated debate, and we'll probably bring that up as well. All right, guys, we're gonna run this intro, and we'll be let's have some fun. Hello and welcome to the Crystal Core Radio Podcast. Brian and Chris here for Work to Game. Today, talking about Final Fantasy 14 crossovers and our big topic: should MMOs even exist on consoles at all? That's going to be what we're talking about today. Feel free to weigh in on the live show or in the video highlights and more of these various topics. Guys, this is, I think, very personal to us. We're obviously Final Fantasy 14 fans and players, and it runs on consoles. So I think if you've been following the channel for any period of time, I'll be interested to see if Chris has any other thoughts, but we have always heard these viewpoints. But beyond that, we're also hearing people wanting other MMOs to run on consoles, WoW on consoles, the New World on consoles, Guild Wars on consoles. So we're going to be bringing that up in terms of like, what do we think it's going to take? What is needed ultimately for that? But before we dive into that, our first topic we want to open up with is a topic we actually had wanting to discuss for a while is Final Fantasy 14 crossovers. There's a number of them we've already had in the world of Final Fantasy 14. And being that we've had those, we also feel, I mean, at least me personally, it feels like we haven't had a big significant one, a new one. I would say probably a new one since the Rathalos event, unless I'm misremembering anything. Chris, like, am I like, I know we had a couple come back, like
15's come back. I mean, we've had Yokai twice. Garo's back right now. The 11 one came back. So they've been cycling back through.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, Yorha and Rathalos made permanent additions to the game, so they just kind of chill. But we haven't had a true like sit down with the dev from the other game as the second half of the live letter and like let's go collab with them in a big, meaningful, profound way. In a while.
Mhm.
There's been questions as recently as the most recent Q&A asking about Kingdom Hearts. There's been questions about crossovers, but there has not been a crossover or an announcement of such. It's always just that continued, we're interested, and that's it.
I think Yoshi P talked about with Kingdom Hearts, like the it would be expensive because the mouse has got to get their
like
cheese,
$5 extra to your sub or something crazy. Like we would all have to pay more every month, probably for the rest of time, to have a one-time crossover.
And for anybody who's thinking like Soro, isn't he like Square? No,
no.
Disney owns all of those characters.
They own everything.
Yeah, they sure do. They sure do. Speaking,
you guys
of
are just lucky to let you wear all the socks in the sock drawer. They own some of everything any of us have ever looked at or thought of.
Yeah. So
thank you for this water, Disney. I really appreciate you letting me drink it for pushing it through the pipes.
The dystopian Disney future. Disney, Amazon, Microsoft, probably going to be like pick a faction,
Apple,
right?
Google.
Oh yeah, I forgot about those two. So
the United Nations of companies.
Yeah. It's like it's gonna be nuts. So outside of that, like when you brought up Yahora, I completely spaced on that because not to like sit here and like that's I think the weakest moment in Shadowbringers for me was the raid, not the mechanics. The fights I thought were fun.
Oh, a blast.
But I was like, man, I just don't think that landed. And so for me, I don't know why. Like, I don't even associate that as a crossover. But I said Rathalos, and I was like, no, you're right. Like, that would be considered a crossover, a permanent fixture. So Rathalos, there's we saw obviously with the PvP event recently return, which was great because we haven't seen that in a while. And the speculation is that's going to dip out. And I don't mind if they dip it out. If it does return, I just wish we had a little bit more like, yeah, it will return in 2 years or it
returns every time we get a new PvP mode or whatever. It comes for a year.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we saw that come back. But like in terms of like future like crossover events, I mean, obviously 16 would be the most logical choice. Do you think?
As the next one?
Yeah.
You're gonna pick a game that hasn't come out as the next most logical.
Yeah, when 15 was coming out, that's when the 15.
Can we just shout out something like Project Triangle Square or Octopath Traveler or something? Isn't something like that as reasonable? Something else that they can make a phone call?
How cool would it be if they did a collab with Triangle Square?
When you push /follow, you follow like right behind them.
Well, like you could have minions and things like that, but start to think about things that we haven't seen investment in, and you have the Verminion, right? Like you have that mini game. How interesting would it be if they were like, yeah, let's go ahead and build this strategy game. We're going to take that and use your minions, If
you beat all of Lords of Verminion, the last fight is delightful. It's a lot of work to get there, and it can be beaten. There are a number of minions that can beat it alone. I did it with Lesser Panda, but the moment I say that, usually in chat, people sound off with a bunch of minions, and I just spammed Lesser Panda so I won. I didn't win first try, but I did win like second or third. The minion that you get from beating the last Lords of Verminion PvE fight is one of the rarest minions in 14.
Yeah.
Not because it's hard, but because nobody is willing to play through 24 matches of Lords of Verminion.
Oh, that's
it's
so
like
funny.
4% of players.
4%? Just 4% of the 27 million?
Of the 27 million.
That's wild. Tactics Ogre, I think, would be like... There's a lot of within Square Enix that would just, I think, makes it easy. Obviously, I think Kingdom's Hearts is off the table. That'd be wild, So I definitely do not think we'll ever see a Kingdom's Hearts crossover in 14. But things like Tactics Ogre, Final Fantasy Tactics, we've already seen that similar, with the Evilise. So they're like, there are these things, and if it is like outside Tactics Ogre, which isn't Final Fantasy branded, so I wouldn't consider like the Final Fantasy Tactics as a technical crossover because it's kind of all encompassing of this theme park of Final Fantasy nostalgia. Tactics Ogre would be cool. Like that would be something pretty sweet. I think they're remaking that game, right, Zoila? Like just sound off in chat because I think that I've heard they're actually doing something with the Tactics Ogre series that got me excited and I immediately forgot. I see also chat weighing in with Chrono Trigger. We already have Dragon Quest. We already have a Dragon Quest crossover. And I'd love to see them bring that back. What do you think?
I Yokai Watch, when it came back, it got like upgraded as an event. So the other thing they could do is like, say another Monster Hunter was coming out, they could come back and level that event up by like reinventing, especially with the ones that go away. So like Yokai Watch came back and there was like the original piece plus the new piece.
Yeah.
It wasn't just a recycle like the 15 event where it was just a relaunch of the exact same event. So they could go ahead and bring some of those events back and kind of upgrade them or modernize them if that's appropriate for the franchise. Yeah, I think most likely a Square Enix title would be the next one. I would want, like, my two dream ones would be that they partner with Breath of the Wild 2 or that they partner with World of Warcraft.
Yeah, doing a Nintendo crossover would be sweet. Because there is a nostalgic history. Like when you think about Final Fantasy, at least for me, for the first part of it, it was all Nintendo. And then we've already seen them do various different things with Nintendo where they're launching like Octopath Traveler and things like that. So if they were to bring in some Zelda into Final Fantasy, I would love to know, chat. Like, would you guys want to see that kind of crossover? And would you be any kind of concern? I mean, again, when we talk about it, it doesn't have to be so dramatic as like bringing the two worlds together. But imagine having like a Link, kind of glamour, right? Imagine having these kind of like, various different things. Does that break the immersion of the game? Does that ultimately?
I'm a pig, so I'm not sure. I'm not your champion on that conversation.
But you're also what? You represent one like what percentage of the 27 million, right? Like it's like,
I regularly get into duties where behind me is a chicken and a hippo, like
a chicken, pig, and a hippo,
like, or an elephant or whatever it is. Like, it's like, what is happening?
Yeah, that would be wild. I think this is just for me, like in terms of it, like when we start to talk about kind of that nostalgia. Obviously, Square Enix IP is huge. I've seen people in chat sound off with Xenogears. Like Xenogears is the game that I just wish we could see remade, reborn. But there's some like these old JRPGs that just like based off of licensing, like the original Breath of Fire is this like collaboration that it just seems to be locked in some kind of licensing hell between various different people, that it's like, oh man, I'd love to see a Breath of, like the ideal is like people have already named them. Chrono Trigger would be incredible to see. Then you start talking about like the classics. I see like, the Dragoon. Legend of the Dragoon. There we go. I was like, why am I thinking Lagoon? I was like, that doesn't make sense. So like some of these classic, Square Enix titles I think would be the best way to go about it. But then if we start talking about like, oh man, I don't know if I'd like to see, because then it's like, the dream would be Mario. Like if you're saying like I'm more of a Mario guy than a Zelda guy, but I think if they put like a Mario-esque stuff in Final Fantasy 14, I would have to say that's jumping the shark. Like we've literally gone way too meta at that point. Like, oh, the Mushroom Kingdom and what have you. Like what, like the lore just implications when you start talking to to the lore guys. It's like, okay, how do we just like, do we make any kind of like parallel connections? Get Chris Pratt as a part of the Mario trailer. Final Fantasy 14, the ultimate crossover. Guardians of the Galaxy. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, as we start to talk about like Chris Pratt and Mario, it starts to make you wonder what would you want from like a live action representation of 14. So that becomes a totally different conversation.
Yeah. They're still working on the Netflix, right?
Can you
the
imagine if A Realm Reborn, the source material was the basis of a TV show? Because A Realm Reborn, the video game, didn't necessarily become like the best use of that source material. There's a lot of moments that I think could be done better with more resources, more time, and more like hindsight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's already a crossover with 14 in PSO2, and Yoshi P said that they weren't going to do that in Final Fantasy 14 because PSO2 wasn't global; it was just localized to Japan. But now that's no longer the case. So I'm with Kippy here. I would love to see them actually collaborate with Phantasy Star. I think that would be really, really cool.
That could do some weird stuff with glamour. That game takes glamour. Don't worry. You think Vieira can't wear hats? They'll let you put a mask on a character whose like nose sticks out of the mask. Like they do not care. You can put whatever you want on that character.
Whatever you want.
Whatever you want. Like, but it doesn't look good. That's fine. We did not check for conflicts. Just equip it. It's totally fine. I don't know. Square Enix made the Guardian of the Galaxy game. Yeah, but that was the Montreal studio, which is the part that they sold off.
No, that's been purchased by Embracer.
So they no longer have access to. That was what, Deus Ex, Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a bunch of non-14 stuff.
Yeah. All right. So to take the topic kind of into the next level, but focusing in it within Final Fantasy, I think I've seen a lot of people in chat, and I echo this. Would love to see a deeper connection with other Final Fantasy games as a part of the whole. Like Endwalker, very heavily influenced by Final Fantasy IV, and that story, especially even in the post-story, patches. I've seen 9 and 10 brought up. I know you're a big 10 guy, and I know we've had some underwater stuff, but no Blitzball. Like, do you think that there could be still more influence that they could bring into the world of Final Fantasy 14 from 10? Or is there another also Final Fantasy that you feel like from a source material perspective, you'd like to see them draw down from?
I mean, anytime we don't bring up Blitzball in this conversation is a mistake. So like, let's just get that all the way out of the way. Because that question gets asked every 9 to 12 months of Yoshi P. And because we always get new players, we've had like 6 or 7 people in chat this week that were over on Twitch while we're streaming, come in and say they're just getting started in the game, or they're thinking about getting started in the game. By the time they leave, they're like, I'm installing now. And so like we've had a lot of new faces in here. That's been absolutely awesome. Sometime in the next 6 to 9 months, those people, that's going to be the first time they've ever heard Blitzball could come to 14, which will be exciting, and then followed by disappointment. Because the answer is no. The answer is no. But outside of that, I really liked the way that Ishgard Restoration made Diadem its own thing. And I really like that like Deep Dungeon gets to be its own thing. Lords of Dominion gets to be its own thing. Like I like when something can go just break the way that system works in the rest of the game. So I think that if you're going to bring something in from another Final Fantasy game, of course we can continue making references to the bosses and the various lore and races and places and things like that. But I also just really like, as we start talking about like limited action type systems going into Criterion and all this, like I would love more references to the way all that stuff works. Like it still feels like a huge just baseline disservice that Phoenix Downs are not more useful unilaterally across the game.
Yeah. I completely agree. I would love to make them stackable at a minimum. And because especially with content like Deep Dungeon coming up, Phoenix Downs end up kind of having but put a long cooldown on them. Like you could make them so much more inventory friendly. You get one.
Had my one Phoenix Down in my inventory for 3 or 4 years. I probably only used half a dozen of them in the whole time in the game because I always hold on to it because it's my one.
Yeah, exactly. I would love to see more connections brought in with 9. We have some stuff already with 8. We've got, Gunbreaker, very heavily influenced, I feel like 8 by its core design. But personally speaking, I think 9, and chat can correct me if I'm just not remembering, but I don't feel like 9 actually has a bigger influence, right? Like when we start talking about going to, like maybe assuming we're going to Meracidia, like Zoila feels like 10 would be a good fit for Meracidia. 9 could as well. Like you could kind of bring in the mist. You could kind of like do some various different things with that area. What do you think?
If we spend more time in Ilsabard and we get a rebuilding in Ilsabard, we could bring in stuff tied to 7. There could very much be like Mako reactor type vibes up in Ilsabard. Like, so yeah, I think as we start to look out at 7.0 and the references it's going to make, I think there's a ton of options. Plus, it's amazing that Amazon Game Studios is over there in the East in the New World. So,
how crazy would that be? How insane would that be? Like y'all thought Sony was buying us. It's been Amazon the whole time, and we seeded this idea like way back when we launched this game, and the New World ends up being literal New World. Like, hey, welcome to Eternum. Like, How pissed would so many people be? Like we were in chat, like in Discord yesterday. I'm not going to call them out because, like, no judgment. You don't have to play New World if you don't want to. But the statement was, "I'll never play New World." Like, okay, like in my opinion, you're missing out. But that mindset, all of a sudden, it's like that would just I would be tickled. I would be so bemused by that aspect. How sick would it be if Amazon was the one who bought Square? Like everybody's thinking Sony or like Microsoft, and then meanwhile it's like, you know.
I mean, the player in me would be bummed to see Yoshi P get a new boss of any kind. The Twitch streamer in me says if we had half the Twitch drops that New World did, we could have so many cooler glamours. We could have so many big, cooler community events. And Twitch drops, the way they've been handled by New World and by Guild Wars, are so much better than the like mixed feelings that we've had with some of the 14 events where there's been this really beautiful, amazing thing. They said, hey, everybody's loving the game. We're going to bring back a mount that was not even available in some regions. And all you have to do is support creators that you love and you get this mount. And then it just becomes this pain point. And then we're going to let some players go off and get to play this game. And like for others, it just becomes this pain point. And so like the scalability of the Square Enix community team hasn't matched how rapidly the community has grown. And so what the community team does is amazing. And it's a love letter to us, and it's passionate. And anytime I've had the chance to interact with anybody that either works direct for the community team or works for any of the companies that they hire to help them put these events on, it has been nothing but a pleasant experience. I've been invited to all of them, and I assume everybody who has the same feeling. The one advantage Amazon could do is Amazon seems to crush when it comes to like, we're ready to promote something and we want everybody to just have a good time. Like
they also have really, really deep pockets. Yoshi P's talked about.
Yeah. I don't think it's
talked about he wishes he had Blizzard's budget. And then all of a sudden it's like, I bet he would look at New World's budget and be like, oh man, Blizzard's budget's nothing.
Amazon's like Blizzard's budget.
Blizzard's budget.
My ATM doesn't even ask me for confirmation if I pull Blizzard's budget out.
Yeah, like exactly.
That's my fast cash withdrawal.
Let's have some fun. Let's have some fun with chat, because I'm not trying to make fun of you, but I love how over on Twitch, lots of F Amazon. I get it, right? Like I get it, and it's like same thing. Like when some I in terms of conversations I've seen, I never use Amazon. I was like, you're talking to me on a service that's running on Amazon, not just even Twitch. Like I was on a different platform, and I was like. I get it. Go ahead.
I like Twitch.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Every 48 hours, I get pinged with some reason that Twitch is going to be in another lawsuit or is having to pull back from hurting some group of people. And that sucks. It does. And YouTubers love to make videos about like, what the hell's happening over on Twitch? And it's like, okay, because YouTube doesn't have any of these issues either. You have you have YouTubers that have like assaulted people and like cars on fire, and like there's crazy stuff happening anytime you get this many effectively independent contractors getting paid by a big company. But behind the scenes, like as a user, Twitch recommendations has been amazing. The idea that I don't have to sort a directory from top to bottom, and I can find people who, this is somebody who people that watch the same people you watch, like, oh wow, I watch 5 streamers. People who watch those 5 streamers also watch this 6th streamer. That's really great. Like that's just legitimately great. And they rolled it out like a while ago, and now it's the default. When I go into a directory, recommended is the default. And if you want to know why a directory is like, normally only 5,000 people watch this game and there's 50,000 people, you have to manually sort by largest to try to find like, oh, there's a live letter going on. Mm-hmm. And so you have to manually make that happen unless you already follow those really big channels. I think they're doing great. I think there have been some snafus, like with the 70-30 stuff. It would have been nicer, in my opinion, to say, hey, we can't do 70-30. for these big top ones because it costs us too much. And we can't roll everybody to 70-30 because of the cost of hosting.
Mm-hmm.
But what we can do is we can say, we're going to do 70-30 on everybody's first $10,000. And all of these little, like all of the smaller creators, us and smaller, who are like, I would love to have a new microphone. That makes this wild difference.
Oh yeah.
And like 10,000 versus 100,000, like tens of thousands of dollars makes no difference in the budget of Critical Role. It just can't make a dent in what they put on. That has to be, you know, advertisers and community support and merchandising. Like it's just layer on layer of cash to make that many full-time salaries in a full production studio. And like it's what they do is incredible. And Twitch ad revenue and Twitch sub revenue on its own isn't going to get them there.
Yeah. The best way, like, you know, on this subject, as my voice decides to fail me, excuse me. The best way, like in my mind, that, you know, like for those of y'all, like it's not necessarily always about the financial money. One of the best ways that, like, if y'all are thinking about to support us is lurking on the stream. Like the higher that number in terms of concurrent goes, that opens up Chris to like more opportunities to bring on sponsors, and that ends up covering a lot of kind of that gap that, you know, we're just because Twitch isn't going to go to this 70-30 for like the first 10K, which would be a game changer. We're not even at those kind of numbers, but just note that for those of y'all here, like if you're on Twitch, sound off with lurk force like Mr. Kaboom just did. That is a huge help. Same thing over here on YouTube, but YouTube, it seems it's so much less. That's where when people ask me where I enjoy streaming, like I stream for Work the Game on Fridays, and it's a lot of fun. It's kind of an event driven, but generally speaking, like if I was just going to be like, I'm just kind of going live for a little bit for whatever, I prefer the YouTube because I'm not worried about the numbers, you know, like, because Chris and I've had those kind of conversations. It's like, we know when it comes down to when, you know, people ask about what we make together, like the number in a way is like a lot of people put a lot of value in it where I don't like.
Yeah. We've been reached out to recently by some brands that found us and some upcoming like early access events to video games. And we hadn't had those in a while.
Yeah.
And that's because relative to everybody else, like the numbers have been really incredible. And so it's giving us more opportunities. But like what's weird is that like on an individual day, sometimes, you know, Brian's doing some back end stuff and he goes, hey, did you see the numbers this week? And I'm like, no. Or the other way around, because like we don't live and die by the, like, I mean, I do pay my mortgage by those, but that's not our sole focus, but it is company's sole focus. So when we talk about things like collabs, like, you know, to get back on kind of the main subject, the crossover events, that has been one of the things is how does it get paid for? I think Yoshi P likes doing them. It's how does it get paid for? And I think like Monster Hunter timing it with a release and, you know, I'd love to see, and maybe crossovers don't have to just mean crossovers. Maybe this subject should have been broader, and it should have been, what would we love to see from the next Twitch drop campaign, or the next Fat Black Chocobo campaign, or the next, you know, these different things they've done. The veteran rewards stop at a certain point. At this point, it feels weird that they stop after like a year, considering the game has been out so much longer than a year. It's not like we're like, oh, well, it should be 9 years. And it's like, no,
but it's
like,
tricky though. We've seen the backlash actually happen in World of Warcraft where they'll like, sub 6 months and you're going to get this mount. And then it's like, oh, your next content drop is not even like 7 months, and then around that same time you're going to be like sub for another 6 months for this mount, and you end up having these big gaps. And Yoshi P originally, like there was a kind of campaign that they did that with one specific mount, the Falcon mount, the Falcon, and I was like, this is really cool, I like that. And then it never came back, and I'm always just wondering, I was like, did they get some kind of negative feedback on that? Did they end up feeling like it added a little extra, like, but it was actually pretty easy to get. It wasn't like sub for 6 months. It was sub for a month and play or something like that. And it was like, okay, cool. Like during this period. And that's what they were talking about, replacing the veteran rewards. And then we never saw that ever come back again. And so I honestly don't know what's going on. Let's see here. And then Mac says, crossovers, can't wait for another Alliance near raids. I never want them to do that again with the raids, with the Alliance raid series. Like I legitimately was just like, man.
You had to do 90 days of subscription anytime between July of 2017 and September of 2017. You had to obtain. So it was a pretty big ask. But then they've also brought it back through one of the irregular Tombstone events.
Oh, cool. The and then Mac was saying like bothered by Twitch ads. Mac, you might want to check to see if you just got gifted the sub. I'm not so sure because Luke just dropping 10 gifted subs on the community. Thank you guys. As an announcement, like we're looking at October the 30th. I think we're gonna dress up in costumes, and we've got a massive collab stream that if you guys missed the last one, it is a ton of fun. And so we've got a lot of thank yous to roll out on the channel. So hopefully you're gonna check that out. Chris, any final topics? I know we kind of just went into the kind of a little grab bag of little pieces at the end of that.
I don't really know where these have started and stopped.
What's
have
up?
Are we done talking about consoles? Are we done?
No, we haven't started talking about consoles yet.
Oh, okay.
We were just shooting the yes.
I know people watch these on YouTube and they're like, these are neat videos, but you know, like sometimes they feel kind of disjointed, and that's because we film these live Monday, Wednesday, Friday over on Twitch. Sometime around like 7:30. Today started at 8. And we may only do 2 topics next week because Brian's got some big schedule changes in his life, and we want to make sure we can get him onto his day. And so, yeah, that's what these are. So yeah, I'm good. Overall, like I think as we talk about this, like what makes these things possible. I love the community events. I love that FanFest is coming back. And I think crossover events are a really nice extension of that. The seasonal events, as one final request, anybody that makes it this far, if you want to champion something, I don't like that the seasonal events die forever. I wish each time a seasonal event came back, we got a new quest, and then you could still access the old quest.
Bigger and bigger.
The idea that somebody picks up Final Fantasy this year and gets to do the Halloween event, and they can't go do some of the previous Halloween events, come back through like an Unreal type system, feels like a loss. Obviously, we got to do it, but that feels like a loss to the community as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I would like to see, again, that FOMO anytime, especially in MMOs, be resisted. There's going to be a natural FOMO, but I always kind of feel it's like artificial FOMO because it's like, okay, so I agree. It would be really cool to see them do that. And then, yeah, maybe the rewards, I don't know. They move them into the cash shop because they need stuff for the cash shop, but it is what it is. To answer this question before we take a Twitch break, it's going to be Logan says, does anybody know what Brian uses for an audio interface for my SM7B? And that's actually a Go XLR. So I have the Go XLR, which has the soundboards and stuff. So I can, it's great, especially when I do streaming, even though I honestly, guys, if I ever have the like, my financial situation is definitely improving. So thank you guys so much for that help, because I haven't, if you haven't known, like I started a new job on Monday. I'm going to go back into the working world. Like I'm, so like, I'm not going to be an independent engineer anymore. I'm going to be working on a team, which is great. I'm actually kind of really excited about it. In fact, I got monitors. I got the work all stuff delivered, and last night I got some new desk monitor mounts. So I'm actually going to be rearranging my setup here because I have the big monitor. So I'm going to move things up and set like basically work on one side and I guess content creation on the left side. That's my thought right now. And on that note, like if I ever get the money, I'm like, I just want to send Chris one of these mics and that board, because it's so funny. Because like this,
I didn't realize that's the mic you had.
Yeah, dude, it's so good.
I didn't realize that's the mic you had. My wife asked me what I would do as far as upgrading a stream setup, and I pulled that mic. That's the mic I pulled up.
This is the best. This is my favorite mic that I've ever had.
Are you? And I talked about it on stream the other day, and I was like, but my mic still works, and like financially, I'm not at a point that I should be replacing things
for my
that work.
birthday. Julie got me for this my birthday.
Incredible birthday gift.
Oh, it was. She's such a supporter. But the Go XLR, what it does, and here's the thing that I'm like, it's funny for me because I'm like, this is what Chris's mind will be blown when he has this ability, because when we stream, either him or I, or when we do our community nights with you guys, like I have the ability that I can still hear you and I can mute y'all to the world. Sometimes people want to come and play, but they don't feel comfortable having their voice broadcast out on the internet. So I have that level of flexibility. I also, if I was doing like a story driven quest, I can actually mute y'all to me and to the stream, and I can mute me to you. So we can still be hanging out. And it just within a board, within just like with the simple button press, it allows me to have that level of flexibility where like on Chris's current setup, it's like you got to either press a button or you got to like do some kind of hotkey. This is like literally like, oh, I'm going to mute chat And then
Oh,
it's
I'm
like
fairly primitive. I use my num keys. I use my numpad for all my scene changes, and my number 7 is what mutes me in OBS, but does not mute me to Brian. So during Brian's thing, I have to manually hard mute the mic. I'm really just flying by the seat of my pants.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like I think actually that's my old mic I gave you because you had a mic that died or something, and I was like, here you go. So Chris has been
he got a new sound setup, and like it came with all this other stuff like cables and the pop filter and like all this stuff, and then I think the arm you're still using and things like that.
Yeah.
But it came with a mic because it was one of those like Amazon deals or whatever that your wife's pretty good at like watching those deals. So then you just had this backup mic, and you're like, oh, if I travel, then I won't have to take mine down. That'll be great. But then you like weren't traveling and needing your mic, and so then when my mic died, you're like, you can have the one. It has so it doesn't have the blue logo anymore. Like the logo broke, so you just pick the one that has the proper logo. It was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Black Taco says, are you going to still do the stream on Fridays? The plan is based off of like, we'll figure it out like how my schedule is, because that's why we've been testing out the morning shows. It's like, hey, jump in, do the show, and then I go to work. And as far as my Fridays, that's still on the plan. It might start at 4:30 or it might start at 5 rather than what I've been starting it as at 4. But like, if anybody knows me, knows that I say 4 and it's probably going to be 5 anyway, because sometimes I'm like, oh, kids need me, or that, like I always try to make sure I'm available. So yeah, that's still the plan. Ideally what you'll end up seeing is I was telling Julia, like, well, I'll just change up my content approach. Like I won't talk about every little thing, but I'll talk about the things that I feel are the most interesting.
We drop 2 topics the first week and make sure we get you to work on time and all that, and then we have a good feel for like, is it a job that, if it's one of those jobs that you tend to stay late and people kind of drift in at 9, and like maybe we can push the third topic and slide you in right at 9. But I think the first day for you to kind of take a break and go get coffee and stretch is better.
So we're gonna have some fun. So today I'm gonna be setting up the new setup, and then I'll be live tonight. And that's gonna be fun. And then I'm really excited. It's been really awesome. It's gonna be good for me. All right. So Chris, do you want to run a Twitch ad break, or did you already?
150 seconds.
Cool. All right. So in terms of that, and I probably
we also got tier 2 support from Luke for the next 6 months.
Whoa, dude, tier 2. Thank you, Luke. That's amazing. Yeah. And as a reminder for those of you who want to join it tonight, New World, I think I'm going to probably be fishing, hanging out with you guys and helping anybody run any kind of quests or dungeons that they need to run tonight. So that's going to be the plan. And then when Chris gets back, we'll be talking over here on the YouTube side about should MMOs exist on consoles. I'm going to keep this thumbnail up because what this does is it helps me when I edit these posts. It helps me when I scrub to go and say, okay, here is this section of the video itself. Good morning, Del Morgan. How you doing today, dude? Dude, thank you guys. Like when I put out, like when I was letting you guys know, I was like, hey man, like all this stuff is getting a little bit like getting real slow. I knew in October, I was like, I pretty much got like everything. All my projects are just kind of in like maintenance. Maybe I do like an hour a month if they need me to go and kind of change an algorithm or two. And it's like, all right, that's not going to pay the bills. And, content creation, like that's definitely not going to cover like what I needed to cover if I was going to be considered full time. And so I'll hopefully will continue to maintain my part-time content creator, full-time, programmer. So yeah, like and y'all, I had a couple of different like referrals that came through. So it's because of the community that I found the job that I'll be working for, and I'm thrilled. I'm really. It's been a long time. I've been solo for like 5.5 years. And so this will be me getting back into that team mindset, which is going to be really nice. And I'm going to be learning some new technologies. I've been learning this week. I've been learning TypeScript, which is so cool. If there's any coders out here with me today, oh man, I'm really liking TypeScript. And then this weekend I'm going to be jumping into Vue. I'm not expected to go into the job on Monday like full on like expert in this stuff, but I just want to have a good understanding of exactly what, like, I'm not just like, oh yeah, I've never even seen the interface for, TypeScript,
so
etc.
When you guys say programming,
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Instantiation? Inheritance? What's
Guys,
an
I don't even know. I'm really excited to be here. I've wanted to learn to program for years.
years? When you say interface, what are we talking about here?
I mean, I have a face.
Yeah.
Is it in my face?
Programming, you say? Oh, that was so funny. Oh my gosh. Thanks guys for that 30 likes, by the way. If this ever gets to 1,000 likes, we kill the show immediately. That's end stream.
We will delete a random video from the channel. Can't tell you which one. It's gone.
Yeah. We will talk bad about whoever you want us to. You just put a name in chat and we will make fun of them relentlessly at 1,000 likes. Doesn't matter who. We will get ourselves canceled within seconds. I thought these guys were nice. It's like
you haven't seen them at 1,000 likes.
At 1,000 likes, it's like the werewolf. Ow!
They are analytically insecure. As soon as they think 1,000 people like them, man, they really
oh man, just guys, 1,000.
I used to like Brian and Chris back when they thought I didn't like them.
Yeah, yeah, I know. turns out, just brutal. Let me tell you about Mario. That little piece of crap, Italian. I can talk bad about Italians because I am Italian. It's like, all right. Start using Italian bad. Actually, it was so okay. I have a true story. It cracked me up. So I'm not going to say the word because you never know, because people could try to clip things out of context. It's the internet. But there's a derogatory term for Italians. Put in your mind. You know like what word I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's a comedian that says he doesn't like when people does this because now you're just making me say the word in my head.
In your head, just
because you don't have the bravery to say it. You're just gonna make me say it.
So I have a client. And he emails me, and he's like, I just got off the phone with this guy, and he was like, do you have a bleep working for you? Like, thinking the email's thinking that this is a guy's name. So he didn't connect that he's emailing me, who's Italian. Do you have a derogatory Italian term working, for you or within the team? And I was like, I was drinking water. I almost did a spit take because like I was like, I know where it's coming from. I was like, well, I mean, just to let you know, like, I am an Italian. Like, are they talking about me? And I was like, I don't even know how they would know I'm an Italian because nobody does. Everybody thinks I'm just some kind of like Irish guy. It's like I do have probably a little bit of Irish in me, but the like at the end of the day, it's like it just kind of I was like, but just to let you know, like that's like a derogatory like term historically for Italians. And so I don't know if he was getting trolled on the phone or something like that, but it was just freaking wild. Oh man, it brought me so much joy. It was just like that. Was
we have
just
a fridge because I was told ours is running.
Yeah, we have a pizza place Italian like that. We embrace it. Only an Italian can call another Italian. All right, that was fun. I enjoyed that story. How about 100 likes 10 times? I don't know, Jake. Y'all are, I don't think we have enough people here to get 100 likes on this one. It might hit it afterwards. Actually, let me just, for context sake, before we jump in.
For all you know, they've been hitting 1,000, and these people are like, they haven't canceled themselves once. Not once.
Our last show got 100 likes, and then a couple shows before that, like, yeah. So it's y'all are getting us there as a VOD. So thank you guys, whoever. If you're watching the VOD, sound off in the comment below. Going VOD watcher.
Speaking of getting canceled, did you know that if you're banned from a Twitch channel, you can't follow them?
Oh, that's cool.
It has the follow button with the empty heart, and you click it, nothing happens.
It's just like, eh.
Doesn't even have like an animation. Nothing.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
I guess that they don't want that notification going off. Like, so if you get banned, it makes you unfollow them. In the first
yeah,
place?
it made us unfollow.
Oh, we got banned.
Yeah.
Oh. We've been banned. I love it.
Yeah. You made like 10 poke the bear posts. Of course we got banned.
I don't know.
I'm just shocked. I keep just poking it, and the bear eventually. Yeah. Yeah.
The bear's a child. All right. I don't
poke
care.
The bear again, I guess. Like I don't.
Yeah, I'll keep if the bear keeps rolling around in the campsite, like I guess you got to choose to do something. All right. Do we want to talk about consoles?
Yes.
Cool.
Speaking of bear poking.
Speaking of bear poking. All right, welcome in everyone. Today we're going to be talking about a subject that's come up in the community quite a little bit, especially as it relates to Final Fantasy, but beyond. I've seen a lot of people calling for other MMORPGs to come to console. Like World of Warcraft is a subject that's popping up more and more, namely because of the controller support, the continued evolution of controller support within World of Warcraft. If you guys haven't been following, I know Force Gaming did a video talking about how more icons are being brought in. They're adding in new targeting features from a controller perspective to make it easier to play on controller, which like I think that's really good. And the question is will like WoW maybe make its way to console? Will Guild Wars 2, now that it's on Steam, will New World make its way to console? A lot of people think that would be a really, really good thing. A lot of people think that MMOs are being held back by their console support. Clearly, I think Final Fantasy XIV benefits greatly from having it on console. I think it benefits greatly from supporting controllers, but you know, I'm obviously very, very biased. Chris, we were kind of talking about this a little bit in the pre-show about, you know, specs, consoles, and the like. Do you think that MMOs are benefiting more from consoles, or are they struggling more because of consoles? What do you think?
Yeah, we got talking a lot about it on the pre-show. Now that we go live over on Twitch Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. That's been really great, and we collab with Brian Monday, Wednesday, Friday of that. So you know, I think we're supposed to self-promo that more often. The first thing I think you noted was that it is two different things. Controller support and console support are two different things. They get grouped in a lot. But Final Fantasy XIV for a lot of years out of the gate and early on in our channel, I was a PlayStation 3 player when I started with a Bluetooth keyboard and mouse. And Brian, the controller guide guy, is a PC player. As a matter of fact, I play on consoles on Wednesday nights with my brothers, and we play with some college friends and those college friends' brothers. And so it's just a whole bunch of guys. And Brian's wife, and Brian doesn't always make it, and I think a piece of that is that like it's, you know, maybe the game we're playing isn't always it, and he's a busy guy, but also like I think it's easier to get you to join me on something that's on your PC. You want a controller, you want to put the keyboard down, but I think you really enjoy your PC setup a great deal, even though you and I do have consoles, because there are experiences that are unique to that. But I think it's two different things. I think should a game be on console and should a game have controller support, they get grouped under the same thumbnail and the same title, but they are two different conversations.
Yeah. In terms of controller support, it's a challenge, right? Like we look at breaking it outside of MMOs. Like there's games that just feel better in terms of keyboard and mouse. Like I think MMOs personally feel better and, you know, on controller, but like when you start talking about real-time strategy, like they've tried a lot of, and honestly, I would continue to encourage them to try and support those on controller. But in terms of that, in terms of competitive or even in first-person shooters, there's always that argument, like, you know, hey, like this performs better, or somebody who's skilled performs better in one input form or another. And so, yeah, like I believe in player choice and options for that. So it's like I would always advocate that, yeah, like if you can make it work, have it as an option, because accessibility, I think, is important for a lot of players. And we have that. I've seen those comments, people who really enjoy the controller guides, not because necessarily like they wouldn't choose keyboard and mouse if they had the option, but some of them don't. Some of them literally physically do not have the option, and controllers give them that structure. So you're right. Like those are two completely like separate, pieces of conversation. Obviously, if it is on console, controller support is kind of paired with that, because it wasn't until recently that consoles actually also started supporting keyboard and mouse.
Right.
PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, PlayStation literally leading the charge, like for keyboard and mouse support, because I think Microsoft for at least a little while was hung up on trying to dissociate themselves from a PC. At least in the 360 era, which would be kind of in line with the
little keyboards you
era.
could like attach to your controller back at the 360 days.
They still have them now. I don't know if they make them anymore, but
yeah, but you could get those on the 360, and so you could respond to people, but then you like couldn't play with keyboard and mouse, which I think a lot of that was to protect Halo. I think a shooter is a format that the keyboard and mouse players just dominate controller, and then when the controller player gets their one kill to every 10 times they were killed, they're like, oh, it's the auto aim. It's the auto aim. The auto aim. Like, unless the auto aim is just going to play the game for me, like, it's just, especially with guns that kick, things like snipers and stuff like that, it just, the mouse is just an advantage. Now, I have spent hundreds, if not thousands of hours with a controller. And so if I pick up a new shooter today, I prefer to play with controller, but like, that's just because that's where my practice is. And so I think they had to differentiate there. If it's not going to be some like inherent advantage, something like a turn-based MMORPG, who cares? Who cares? Anything they want to do. They want to play with foot pedals. They want to play with a Wii controller. I don't care. Like, as long as they can clear the content, we're good. And I think when you have a 2.5 second global, that's not a big deal. So yeah, control scheme seems like anything with a big enough studio to support it should support as many control schemes as possible. I don't think it's fair to ask an indie dev who's making their first game and they're just supporting keyboard and mouse, like, well, how come you don't support these 16 different controller interfaces? Like, I'm just excited to be able to publish the game. Like, I don't think it's, so I do think as soon as there's resources, controller support should be there. And it's weird that games like World of Warcraft, or even more odd that games like Guild Wars, where there is an inherent, like, it's basically a 12 button game plus movement. Why is that not already on controller?
Yeah, Steam support helps out a lot. So I play New World on controller. New World's another good example of a game that I think would be perfect if it had native controller support. But then you start talking about, like, okay, when you're in the map, how does, like, you have to design that. And that's the one weakness of Steam's built-in support, is that it doesn't have context awareness of pretty much the mode that you're in. And so you can actually kind of program mode shifts. But if you ever get out of sync from whatever mode the game thinks you're in to where the controller thinks you're in, it can end up being and cause issues. And so it ends up being something where it's like, yeah, like, I really still think that native is Guild Wars 2, New World, heck, even WoW, to the point where as just an option for that. And then that makes the conversation of then do they move those games to console? Now, Final Fantasy 14 is I think the best example, kind of almost in a way, like, if you start to say, like, who does it the best? Final Fantasy 14. I think that Yoshi P did not even patent their setup, because he hopes that essentially, like, WoW kind of defined a language in terms of interface and how people think about MMOs. It would be really cool to see Final Fantasy 14 define that kind of as, like, oh, they're the ones who are kind of leading the charge, and everybody else is kind of learning from them and being able to adopt those kind of inputs. And so I would love to see, even if it wasn't, like, and an action game is a little bit different, in terms of, like, because ESO supports controller, but for that of something like WoW or Guild Wars, or yes, that would be so much beneficial. And then the question is, you spend the time and effort on porting it? And I think a lot of people get hung up on specs when it comes to consoles, and I think that's the incorrect direction. I think there's actually a bigger concern about console support that has nothing to do with specs. But what do you think, Chris?
I mean, I think when PlayStation introduces a new console, all they do is talk about specs. And so, like, we've been trained by the consoles that specs are king, and that's the reason to upgrade consoles. It's all about feature, never about benefit. It's all feature, feature, feature. And the closest to a benefit they get is third-party exclusives. They don't talk about what they're doing to make games possible now. That like it's all about features and exclusives. And so, that's been conditioned into us. We were trained to think that way. Typically, consoles fall above the minimum PC spec. So when I see people saying that consoles are holding the game back, they are most often a PC player that has been in a fortunate position these days. And that's not even just money, to have also just even been given the opportunity to acquire a good PC. I run my streaming rig on an NVIDIA 3080, and it's amazing. There are a lot of people that don't have a graphics card that's that new, and one day mine will be that graphics card. They're like, oh my god, you're on a 3080, that thing's ancient, because I'm going to run this thing for a while. And so when we talk about like if they would drop PS4 support in Final Fantasy 14, the game would move forward. The minimum spec, the minimum what they can expect from the PCs is oftentimes lower. It's oftentimes lower across the board. So I think that it's not the single biggest determinant in like what they do, because MMORPGs in particular, which is the games we most often talk about, are meant to be as widely appealing as possible. They are asking, okay, I have 100 features I want to put in the game. How close to 100 can I get if this game runs on a microwave? Like, that's their goal. They want to invite the most people possible. And they're like, well, sir, get us down to 50. Okay, what if I get you up to a Samsung fridge? We could support 85. I think 85 is plenty. Let's roll with the Samsung fridge. Like, I think that's the goal. And so when people are like, well, they should drop PS4 support, especially when if anybody's saying that because they assume that PS4 players can just move to PS5, like they can just go pick one up because A, they're not cheap, and B, you got there, you finally saved up that amount of money and you got to the store and they didn't have them. Like, I don't think that's a fair argument. So I do think they should be on consoles, and I don't think consoles are what's holding this particular genre back. I think if you're talking about there are games that like the visuals are a bigger part of it, and then you have to ask like, well, how commercially viable is it to up the spec to the point where, like, of course consoles are not supported, because also the minimum PC spec's incredible.
So when it comes down to that, like when it comes to the specs themselves, I think the thing that frustrates me is that it's not like you drop PS4 that the game immediately gets better. I think in terms of especially a multiplayer game, and more and less than a subscription-based game, volume is critical. Like the idea behind the rating team, right? Like usually what it is like, oh, these fights, like I don't even think it's a visual thing. I think visually maybe you get a little bit, little bit of boost not having to have lower end PCs, but I think you cut off so many players that the finances just don't make sense. These games are built and grow and thrive off of more and more people playing them. And I think that when it comes down to it, it's that I just don't see how, like, outside of, I think what would actually benefit MMOs more than anything else is some of the latest technologies that have happened, right? It's not actually about how these devices play. Let's just sit here and say, like, the spec argument in terms of like MMOs specifically doesn't make sense. Cloud computing, like AI, these kind of things and these kind of technologies, I think will be what help differentiate MMOs over the next, or here in around 10 years, when you start seeing these new modern MMOs kind of built with these kind of systems and ideas behind them, and how you then play them and engage with them is going to be something that will be interesting. I think consoles should be supported, but if people were worried about that, let's say the Switch, right? Let's say, should Final Fantasy 14 come to Switch? Immediately, a lot of people go, no, because Switch is the specs, and you're gonna have 14 would have to sacrifice things for that. Counter argument is like, no, Switch runs games on the cloud and in an online only game already. Right. You have internet. Like, why not just
somebody with a bad internet connection in Savage is not getting it clear. It's not like, oh, but I have a 3090.
I have a 3090. Your internet,
you lose internet connectivity, right. Nothing matters.
I had a really good computer. This is one of the things that, like, again, specs wise, I couldn't clear Titan back in the day, back in ARR. I was like, man, what's going on? Well, it turns out there was a problem on my motherboard, and my network connection was messing up. And I did not know this till I got into the Titan fight, and I couldn't clear it. Because I was like, wait a minute, I have really good internet in this house. And then I went and checked, and then on my PC, the internet was just it was messed up. And then I go check every other device in the house that's on the internet. It's like, no, this has got a clear connection, low ping, and etc. What's going on? It turns out I needed to get a part replaced, and I did, and I was able to clear Titan. So it's like online has a massive impact, and that's where it's like I think that MMOs, the more people you can get in, that is going to be better. And even if, let's say, that person, clearly PS3 was a struggle, right? That's where I think the argument comes in. But I think that discounts how much more powerful the PS4 was compared to the 3. And
dropped
how
a bunch of PCs at the same time they dropped PS3.
Oh, PCs were people like PS3's holding
they raised
back.
the spec across. They raised the PC spec, and when it passed PS3 got pushed out.
Exactly. So it's like the PC was actually the lower spec machine than the PS3,
right.
And it's like, and still today the PC is still the lowered spec.
Yeah, you used to be able to run this game on an unbaked potato. Now it has to be a baked potato plugged into an alarm clock. So it's come a long way. And our draw distances and our textures and all that are better for it. You really feel it in some of the up close cutscenes and some of the older stuff. But even then, you clear the final cutscene of Endwalker max spec. It's not in the ballpark of what's being done in some of these other games.
Yeah.
It's not in the ballpark of what Ashes of Creation can show in an alpha. There are just prettier games than 14 from a graphic fidelity standpoint. How many pixels can they put on the screen, and how many ways can they calculate light and reflections and textures and but I mean, I personally don't think MMORPGs as a genre, graphics is the defining trait for me. It's a cool thing, and New World is beautiful, but I like WoW, and WoW is super cartoony. If there was a Borderlands MMO tomorrow all cell shaded, that'd be fine. It's not a game type that I play for beauty to get lost in. It's cool that it has it, but that's a feature just like anything else. I would rather it have a rewarding crafting system than better graphics if that's a weird board meeting that they're in. Well, we have a weird choice here to make. It's I would rather, MMOs for me are just they're systems. They're systems. Yeah. And I would rather the systems be balanced and well thought out and well supported than them have some graphics and visual effects artists that are just dominating the industry.
Yeah. I think it's at this point in MMOs when we start to talk about that and this topic itself is that I think MMOs that don't have a console strategy, or at least a ability to stream to a console, and Steam, you can count Steam Deck in that kind of fold now as kind of what I would say as a hybrid, because you build it for PC. It's a PC. It just happens to also be a console, as opposed to something where it's I need to publish through Microsoft or Sony, which is what I think is actually kind of the biggest detriment and the biggest challenge with consoles, is that Yoshi P, from an update perspective, has to get that update to the console manufacturer so that it gets certified and that it gets rolled out, on PlayStation. And the more that you add to that, that actually kind of slows down. That could have an impact on that process for making sure that updates go out on time to everybody. The other option is that you end up having kind of a console play space and a PC play space like ESO does. And my biggest complaint about ESO is that I can't, at a minimum, if you don't want to support cross play, which I think is a real critical component to multiplayer games, especially now, if you don't want to support that feature, not having cross save is the detriment, I think, to you. The ability to take your character and play in the different sandboxes, I think, is an absolute must. But when I start looking at things like Blue Protocol and Ashes and Pantheon and in the future, I think ultimately you're going to sit here and struggle, because imagine if you and your team or your friends, somebody's on PlayStation, someone's on PC, someone's on, whatever. If you are hey, let's go play this new MMO, and it's wait a minute, I can't afford a $3,000 machine or a $5,000 machine. Let's talk about that as just a cost of gaming privilege, as opposed to my $500 console. Cool, I'm in, I can afford that.
I just plug into the TV. There's no peripherals, really. It's just...
it's the same kind of thing. If any looter shooter wants to compete against Destiny 2, they have to have crossplay, cross save baked in. Otherwise, guess what people are going to just do? They'll go back to playing Destiny after like trying it out for a week and realize like, well, it's more fun playing with my friends. Like it's more fun being able to play with the people that I want to play with and not have to sit here and try to coordinate hardware. No one's sitting here like, hey, Chris is like, Brian, you want to play this mobile game with me? Like it's on an iPhone. I actually have an iPhone, but it's like, oh, but I only have an Android. Well, I guess we can't play together. Like that future is not a thing. Like that's just not going to be how it is. And so if they're not coming up with kind of a console cross-play, cross-save kind of strategy, I think those games are going to struggle right out the gate.
I mean, cross-play, cross-save varies by genre what that means. And so like when I play Call of Duty, I don't want to play with PC players. It's not fun because inevitably there's going to be somebody that either is just incredible with a mouse and keyboard or is using an aimbot, because I can just tell you that I literally like walked out past a doorway and got popped in the head 6 times in a row instantly, didn't even see them. And like, that's just not fun. I don't mind having it as an option. The only concern there is then if like it starts to be, you have to wait 10 minutes for a match. If you have it disabled, then it's not an option anymore. So that's the only concern, is there's like a slippery slope concern. But like, you know, when we go into like custom lobbies and stuff, we have some friends that play on PC and we've done crossplay because like, I know they're not like at that point, it's not a big deal because they're not using an aimbot. And so that's going to vary by genre, but in the MMORPG space, there absolutely should be crossplay, cross save across the board. At a minimum cross save, the only exception is if they cannot police a platform the same way they do the others. If you have ever seen Diablo 3 on the Switch and you go look at like the top players, they have like 16 gems equipped to every single slot. And it's like that. But how do you do that, Chris? You can't even equip that many gems. Yeah, that's a really good freaking question. Like it's blatant. And because because it supports offline play, the moment if Final Fantasy XIV supported offline play on the Switch, then all of a sudden you're letting somebody take that off into their private dev environment and do whatever they want and then remerge it with everybody else's crap.
Yeah, so, we had that problem back in PSO days. PSO, when it launched on consoles, had an offline mode and an online mode. People would take it offline, break it to all hell, and then go online, and it was just like, yep, that's a hacker, you know, and you would know it because it's like, oh, they're curing me and I'm dying. You know, it's like they flipped the sign, baby, and that's how people would try to PvP and things like that. So no, I'm with you 100% in that, and that's where it's like back to your Call of Duty kind of, you know, complaint. Like for me, like I'll play on console or PC, and like it doesn't bother me. Like I'll do what I do. But in terms of that's where it's like I'm saying, like even if it's cross play does not make sense for competition terms, cross save is so critical, because the thing is that you should have the ability to do is like, oh, I want to play here today, or I want to play here today. You're not having to start all over. You're not having to start fresh. And that's what a lot of, I think, when you see games that don't have that kind of philosophy, it means that we're just going to migrate back to whoever does support that comfort and that design. So like in terms of Final Fantasy, like I do wish that it would come to Xbox, and we're still waiting. Phil says, Yoshi P, like all the words say like they want this to happen, but Microsoft
nothing in the way.
Yeah, nothing in the way. Microsoft hasn't cut either a big enough check or whatever it ends up being. They both want to see this ultimately happen. Who knows? Like
Microsoft says they want it, nothing in the way. Final Fantasy says nothing in the way, and they want it. Sony hasn't said anything.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know how to speculate about this, but like, I'd appreciate if Sony'd come out and say, we have not stopped Final Fantasy XIV from going to any other platforms.
Yeah, that doesn't.
Not saying that's what they're doing, but like, it'd be nice if they just kind of cleared the air, because I'm wondering where it is. So the last piece of this is add-ons. So the last piece of this is the only thing that consoles do is they do restrict the ability to modify the game. And so when you look at like the life that games have had that have allowed add-ons, you look at Minecraft, you look at Grand Theft Auto, you look at any of the Bethesda product, mods have extended the life of those games beyond their amount of support that they can roll out. Then when you extend that to things like Guild Wars 2 and World of Warcraft, they have augmented that play. Everything from preferences and how to be advanced all the way down to like accessibility and ability to do things like RP. And so like add-ons as a phrase, it usually gets linked to like DPS meters and things that help tell people to get out of the boss's bad stuff. But like add-ons as a category is enormous. And Final Fantasy XIV's official stance is nothing that's an add-on. And so how do you resolve World of Warcraft going over there? Now they've added native support to World of Warcraft today does about 1 billion things that
more than it used
vanilla would have required as an add-on.
Yeah.
And so they have gotten better and better and better and better at rolling that stuff in, much to the bane of the add-on supporter, the add-on people who have learned to make a living at that. And then their add-on just gets folded in native, and it's like, well, see you later. Thanks. So there is this kind of question of like, how do you resolve the add-on community?
Well, essentially one of two things. Either it's hard in terms of console because of the certification and things like that. I think essentially you either kind of go Yoshi P's stance and saying we don't support it because, but you start to learn from it, right? Like you use it as these are the features that PC clearly has. When it comes down to it, if you're saying that people aren't using add-ons at 14, then I'm going to say you're ignorant because they are. And what it comes down to, the policy of it is that I hope that Yoshi P means what he means, and he says we're going to go learn from what the add-ons are doing, and we're going to see about incorporating that into the game in a supported way. That's, I think, the best thing. So in terms of WoW, same concept. No, it's just not going to be supported with add-ons on console. And what you're going to get is you're going to get a curated experience, which is what a console is. A console is that curated experience where we know that this is going to run. We know that this is the experience you're going to have. WoW is in a little bit more of a difficult or precocious kind of spot because they kind of just leaned on the add-on community as opposed to like looking at what they did to incorporate it. Now, over the course of time, now they've adjusted some of that and brought it more in. But people would always say it's like you can't play WoW without add-ons, and then the devs would design fights with that. Oh yeah, people are going to have add-ons for this fight. Now, I think that's being changed. So I would say within the like WoW space, no, add-ons aren't supported. Like this is going to be your curated experience. And if there is an add-on out there on PC that would make the console experience better, well, then the devs need to get to work, and then they need to come up with a plan on incorporating that to the game itself. And one of the things that was very clear, especially with my limited time in WoW, it's like, yeah, add-ons were cool. I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. But then the immediate comparison to 14 was like, oh, but it already had that. It already had that functionality right from the go. That was.
I mentioned we were talking earlier, right? Yoshi P said he wishes he had the budget of Blizzard. What also helps with that? Blizzard has gotten to avoid spending some of the money that Yoshi P spends, or spend it differently, right? His QA team gets to look at feedback reports from the PTR, which means that the number of testers is much larger, and then they get to look at direct feedback and they get to see all these weird things, as opposed to they would have to go out and create all those weird circumstances. And so it's not that there's not a QA team on WoW. There is a QA team on WoW, but that QA team gets to function differently because he has the community involved, or Ian has the community involved in that process. And so it's the same with add-ons. It's not that WoW doesn't have a UI team. They do. It's not that they haven't continued to update what the game can do natively. They do. Yeah. But they get to also continue to support and develop a API. And when they look at rolling something in, when they look at adding new unit frames, they get to say, okay, let's go out and let's sort by popularity. Let's sort by rating. Let's go look at reviews, and let's go check out the 27 most popular unit frame add-ons before we decide what to roll in. And so it's a huge advantage budget-wise to be able to beg, borrow, and steal from the add-on community anytime they want to. And they have restrictions around what add-ons can do, and they will ban certain add-ons and stuff, but it's a lot. And you can play add-ons, or you can play 14, you can play WoW a lot more native now than you could. And when I see new players who are getting into WoW for their very first time, I know that's weird for any of us that have, maybe 10 or 15 years with the game. But when you see some of these, when I watch some streamers who it's their very first time, it shocks me how natively they're playing. Because they're not being told to do add-ons. And so they just download the game. They're like, I don't know. I've always heard a lot about World of Warcraft. I'm going to give it a shot. It shocks me. And because they don't run into the pain points I did, once you cross over to add-ons, once you install like the curse launcher or whatever, it's not just one add-on. Like the moment you get used to that, the fact that you don't even have to reboot the game, like the moment you hit a pain point, I just download another add-on. But that initial threshold, there are a lot of people playing the game totally natively now.
Yeah. Even Asmongold commented on when jumping into 14, it was just nice because all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, he was trained up on, okay, I got to go do this to have this experience. And then it's like, well, it kind of has it already. And maybe there's some things that you want to do a little bit differently. And I would love to see Yoshi P crowdsource that, because there is a massive amount of value in actually getting real data. Because like, I don't know if y'all all feel the same way, but I do feel like actions are more valuable than words. And I feel like sometimes gamers talk a big game. And so that's where it's like when it comes down to hardcore servers, I've advocated for this people in 14. It's like, oh yeah, you want that hardcore server, like you want 14 to be harder. Like it'd be neat to see them kind of segment it off into its own little section and be like, listen, y'all asked for it. Here's the data. Here's the 10 people who actually said that it was not worth the money. Same thing with New World. When we talk about like the PvP flag, people want like an all PvP, like with Ashes, like what Ashes is trying to say that they're going to do. I'm really excited. I think there's going to be a popularity thing, but then ultimately when it settles down, like I think when you look at the numbers, it's like, yeah, clearly people like PvE in terms of like a scale of 100 to 1, so can you make a game off that? And the answer is no, you need volume. And that's why consoles are also, I think, value driven to the MMO itself. 14, I think, uniquely benefits from that, where in the case of World of Warcraft, where you kind of all of a sudden have that ability with cross-play, cross-save. I can, and I think somebody's asked me, like, did I play on PlayStation? I did until my PlayStation died, and I would actually have if I get a PS5, I will have 14 on that game. I will put it there. I will have a license on that. I will have the ability to kick back and play on the PlayStation, and I think that's a good thing. I want that flexibility in my life.
It's on my PS4 because I used to gather on my Vita.
Yeah. And so beyond like PlayStation, and that's why I also advocate for Xbox, like the more places that you can kick back and play, because it's not always about the raid experience. I know so many people put so much value in the raid experience, but it's crap. Like I'm glad you enjoy it. But when we talk about all the offerings that the 14 does, the people who put like that as the pinnacle piece of it, like I think it's like, that's great for them, but it doesn't represent the whole. It's not that aspect. Like it is not everybody's mountain that people want to climb. And that's where I kind of like, that's where I get frustrated. It's like, okay, yeah. Oh, you might have a better rating experience on your $6,000 machine. Well, no joke. Yeah. I have an ultra wide monitor on my PC. I'm going to have a better raid experience no matter what my graphics card is, right? Because I can see more, but that is not the be all end all of Final Fantasy or any game. But I see this in terms of this kind of like culture that it's like, it's all about the raid. You got to get into the raid. You got to do the raid.
Any single piece of content in a theme park style game. No one thing is carrying the load.
Oh, right.
The story is not carrying the load. The only reason we have 100% story completion across all players is because it's mandatory. The moment you actually just make it like Guild Wars, where it's like, hey, whenever you want to do the story, it's in this optional kind of, they have like a new game plus menu that's just how it starts. It's just default. You just only do the story when you're ready. I think you would find that the clear percentage of the story would be a lot lower, and they let you even pick by expansion. I think you'd find that like the percentage of A Realm Reborn and Stormblood completion would just be lower than Shadowbringers and Endwalker. It just would. And so like any one piece of Final Fantasy 14 is not so single-handedly important that every single player has to enjoy it or get out.
Right.
It can take any combination of all these little mountains. Not all the mountains are the same size. And if that is what is worth $15 a month to them, that's great. They're welcome to be here. There's 27 million of us. I think we get it. And it's like, yeah, but I asked 7 of my friends. And it's, So, when we talk about consoles versus PC, I don't think content type in an MMO is really the determinant factor, because there should be no one content type that's driving this game. Not PvP, not raiding, not story, not crafting, none of it. It's literally like, do you get enough value to justify your subscription?
Right.
That's it.
Well, and that's what it should be. But it's like even Virtual talking in chat, talking about Destiny, how it's all about the raid because that's where you get the better loot. But it's also where you get the better loot in 14. And that's where I think the system in and of itself breaks down. The counter argument that I hear, which I don't agree with, is that you don't need better loot if you're not doing the raid. And it's like, there's still the want to have, like, can I get the best stats, on my character, because it does benefit me in other areas, right? When we start talking about criterion, when we start talking about just generally playing it, having that additional power and being locked away behind
what changes in
what
your
people
life
cynical.
today if your item level, what's your item level right now? 6, 10?
It's 6, like
12?
11, 12, 15, some between
What
that.
changes if your item level is now 628 or 630?
You output more power, and so like
In
whenever
what?
you're playing the dungeons and the criterion and in the open world, so no matter what you do, you're doing a little bit better. That being locked away behind a raid is flawed in my opinion, and when games do that, I can't get behind it. There should always be avenues to get that level, because what does it hurt? Does it hurt the raiders that I get the same power level by going a different route? No, it does not. Does that, so does that make sense?
I think having self-looped systems is fine. The fact that Island Sanctuary has loot that you can only get from Island Sanctuary is fine.
I disagree, but anyway, go ahead.
I think the fact that, Palace of the Dead, when it first came out, had loot that was locked behind it. Eureka, when it came out, had loot that was locked behind it. I think to say that there's a reward, there's a unique kit, there's shared carrots, these things like tombstones, and then there's these unique carrots behind each system to chase. I think that's totally fine.
In terms of look, I can agree with
raid,
you.
like
right.
Raid specifically, people want that challenge, but they want the challenge that's tuned to them. And so week 1, you go in with this really low item level. And then as you progress through the weeks, your item level rises, which allows raiders who are in groups that maybe make a little bit more mistakes or maybe have a little bit worse comp to progress through the fights a little bit cleaner each week as their total average item level increases. That's really important in games like World of Warcraft, where there's a lot more than 4 fights, because if you're working on fight 8 and every week you're clearing the first 7, you're getting a lot of loot. And so your average item level is kind of slowly pumping up. And so I think that's a perfectly valid way to do that. And if anything, I think that I would rather the game have more of those things. So like, why does Gil not have some sort of circular feedback loop where the more Gil you have, the more Gil you make? Why is everything not? Why is Poetics something that caps at 2,000? Why can't I spend Poetics to increase my Poetics cap to spend Poetics to increase my Poetics cap? Why is everything not more feedback looped and then all of that so that I can buy a 10,000 Poetics mount? Like, why is it? I want more isolated carrots, not less.
Yeah, I can get behind some of the like visual aspects, but when it comes down to like the power aspects, like even back to your point with like Deep Dungeon, it's like now it doesn't matter because you're not using that weapon in terms of power, but in terms of power progression in and of itself, that I think that it's when you make those isolated loops and that content set to not have value over the long term, as opposed to like, oh, you can spread that out. And so then whatever you end up doing, if you want to do the raids, that's the most efficient way, meaning like you're going to get it within 8 weeks. But if you want to go do Deep Dungeon, you can go do that for the next 200 weeks, and you can still like actually have that ability. So you as a player get to choose how you want to spend your time, as opposed to being told where to spend your time. And that's what that kind of culture it is. And that's a culture that I don't know if it came over from WoW, but that obviously WoW kind of set the standard of the mold, and many people have been trained up on that. And for me, thankfully, I haven't been. That's why I find
capping tomes is an hour and 15 minutes a week.
Yeah, and capping tomes does not get you the best power gear in the game.
I mean, it gets you freaking close.
Right, but we're again like it doesn't seem, I know it doesn't have to, I don't have to make sense to people. I'm not trying to convince people to change their mind. I'm just telling them how it is, like on why I find it to be a system that it is not something I enjoy in that regards. So it's that I enjoy systems where it's like you as a player get to choose whatever you want to do, and that's going to have varying different degrees of success. But ultimately, you're not being told that in order, like if the best loot in Destiny is in the raid, yeah, those are systems that I think are fundamentally flawed, as opposed to like, okay, yeah, you can get the best loot. The raid is the most efficient way to get the best loot, but you can still get there over the course of your time investment. Does that make sense?
You still get there in 14. We have an 8-month raid cycle. And in that time, we have the patch that the raid was associated with, We have its half patch. We have the Alliance raid, which allows you to upgrade your tome gear, and then which you could also be upgrading through the hunt system, which requires you just follow a train of 150 people. And then we have its half patch. And now we're going to be getting these Criterion dungeons, and we have no idea what they're going to do.
That's where what that would do would be really cool to see.
It already has the thing you have. You just don't get it as quickly as them.
No, it does not. It has two pathways. Then the second pathway opens with time. I'm not knocking that. Being able to take tome gear and upgrade that is a system that I'm like, that's great, because you now have two pathways of getting to the item level that you want, right? I'm hoping Criterion ends up adding in a third pathway. What I'm asking is that why can't crafted gear also get there over time? It doesn't have to happen right away. Like I said, it doesn't need to be you can, but you cannot upgrade crafted gear to the highest. It's still a step down. It gets you to the raid. Right? Why can't crafted gear also eventually get upgraded enough so that it does that? No, it doesn't. Like when does
patch? It goes.
Does crafted gear is going to be the same as the relic and as the upgraded tome gear? Crafted gear is always one step below.
Melds, so it gets. Once again, like when you look at stat priority, Savage gear is not the best in every slot.
It is 610. It will go to 620. The gear cap is 630. If I'm doing my math correctly, 630 is bigger than 620.
My best in slot is not full Savage gear, Brian. There are slots that I want the 620 in because of stat priority, because they don't do a good job reflecting the way materia.
Why is that best in slot gear?
Because the item level. Then? Because the item level, the little number in the top, the eye level, is an arbitrary rough power scale they put on it and is not actually representative of what it means to my class.
Okay, so that's actually still
a 620 piece might be like a 631 for a warrior because of just how well stat allocated.
But it's not. It's still a 620 piece, and this is a conversation. That's another deeper conversation about why can't materia actually increase the item level of the gear, because that is what we're talking about. We're talking about that item level. Now, in terms of best of slot, okay, great. I agree with you. In fact, we see that with crafted gear, right? Some of the crafted gear for crafting is actually better, even though it's lower power level. But we're talking about overall, why can't a crafted piece of gear for the battle side of it that will be upgraded to 620, why can't that also at some point down the road get to 630? Is there a reason?
I mean,
does anybody have a reason other than?
I think you just don't like vertical progression systems at that point, because it's always a matter of time. Like you say, you like gearing up in the 6.5 patch. That's something that you regularly say because it's the longest patch cycle. So you feel you get the most bang for your buck. But at the beginning of the next expansion, they hand us 9,000 coffers worth of armor. So technically that all gets tossed in the trash during the expansion. You just get to throw the coffers onto your alts. But like a main who chose to say 6.5 is the patch I ignore, they would have all of their stuff just handed to them through the MSQ.
Right. And then when the update rolls out, you can just use Poetics and you're going to be ready to rock and roll.
So being capped on Poetics going to the expansion is like the best thing you can do. Go through a couple quests. The first time you get to a dungeon, if you like you're under geared, go spend your Poetics on Augmented for the slots that are lowest. Like you could ignore the 0.5 cycle and be just as successful as what you're saying. So vertical progression systems sounds like it's your point of frustration. It's not Savage. It's the idea that gear expires and the idea that there is always a need to climb to the top of the mountain. And when I get there, either A, it's really steep at the top, but then it's all going to just get moved anyway. So I think
I would agree that horizontal is better than vertical, like 9 times out of 10 for sure. But in terms of what I'm arguing is that, and I see Carrie saying to encourage that people engage with the newest content. Like, I'm not saying that it can't be time gated. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, right now, when it comes down to it, like, especially when you start to look at the end, it's like, I'm talking about why can't there be more and more pathways to that theoretical item level cap? Right now it's 630. We know that's going to go up, but we'll just keep with the 630 in mindset. Imagine that being the highest item level that you could reach right now. Well, that can't be done through tomes. And it will be through tomes in the next update, outside unless you actually engage in the one piece of content that would reward you with those things. So, but ultimately in the next update, 0.3, then tome gear is going to be more easily actually brought into that level before then, it goes up again. But why can't then, even maybe with the tomes, like after even 8 weeks after 0.3 and the point, whatever, couldn't we see them continue to offer that? I think it discourages
time gating is the whole reason. Time gating is the whole reason.
I understand time gating. I'm saying pathways though. Like there's no time gating behind that. The crafted gear cannot also then become that additional to reach that same power cap that the tomes and the raid, and who knows with the criterion, like all of a sudden we start, you start having multiple pathways. It gives the player base more options in how they choose to engage with the content, rather than being told that this is the content. Whether that you want to incentivize people to do the content or not, like it is in what it is. And so like I think I hopefully made my point clear. I don't need people to convert to my way of thought. I look at that, I go, I think it's a missed opportunity. I think you can have both horizontal and vertical progression within these games and actually have them function in a much more holistic way, as opposed to like, and this is same kind of complaint with Destiny, same kind of complaint with those kind of games. It's like, okay, well, that's the thing. And that's
Destiny and WoW get a little weirder because loot doesn't all function identically.
Right.
In 14, it's a very flat system.
Correct.
Like there's only so many pieces, and they all are just reallocations of stats. You don't have anything that like fundamentally changes the way your class plays, fundamentally changes the behavior. You don't have anything that like gives me an extra fell cleave per inner release. There is nothing like that modifies the way I play. I don't know that, like, to use it in open world stuff, the difference between 620 and 630 is non-existent. Things like hunts, things like tribal dailies, it's non-existent. And in dungeons, I'm already getting my Troya time with, I'm at 614 or something right now, so I'm not that much higher than you, because I have no Savage Loot equipped. And my Troya time can already be down, like with a wipe, I think our Troya time's down at like 14 minutes. And so we're already lightning fast, considering I did one the other day with just a random duty finder group, and it was like 26 minutes. So like already, like, player quality is the bigger determinant. And the act of pentamelding and the act of crafted gear is pretty lackluster. So saying like we should create the ability to like pentameld again 8 weeks in, I just don't think that sounds fun to me.
That's fine. And is the difference between 20 and 30 significant? For some people it is. And it's, again, like, would it make a difference to me? No, I again, just being able to play and go and have that, experience. Like, for some people, not being able to get 630 gear could be significant. It wouldn't be a problem. I don't see how it would break the overall experience. But again, like I said, to each his own. Not trying to convert y'all, but like, that's something that I think would be really cool to see them take another pass at. And again, it can still, time gating, I understand why it exists. We were talking about it earlier this week in terms of like a lot of people talking about like, oh, but it's not, you'll still get to the end goal. And it's like, okay, we're all going to run a race and then we're going to limit ourselves to 1 mile a week of this race. And after 8 weeks, we're going to send Chris back to the start of the race. And he's still limited to that 1 mile a week. He will never be caught up until eventually everybody kind of hits that wall. And that does not seem fair in terms of its design. And there's, like, people are welcome to discount that, but it's like, that's the system in terms of progression.
I think I should be able to run at 1.5 miles per week, right, until I get to my prog point.
And then if you had to, like, oh, now you could do 2 miles per week. Like, it's like, just ultimately, like, we're not talking about removing walls. We're just talking about like, wait a minute, you've done this. It's like, what's ultimately being, hurt by that. And that's essentially kind of the example that I think I gave a couple of people in the comments. It's like, okay, like, I understand where you're coming from, but here's the reality. Like, we are putting a physical limiter on you, and you did that limit, and then we're asking you to do it again, and you're now forever behind everybody else. And the other example you gave, I think was a really good one, was imagine then if they could set a different item level requirement for healer as opposed to everybody else. Like, oh, we see that you switched to healer, you're now back in 610 because that's your new starting point. And this kind of all is, in my mind, ties into exactly what we're talking about here. But now all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we know you can do the fight. We know you can clear it in 610, but there's still that kind of natural humanity when it comes to the gear number. Like, people put a lot of points into that gear score as opposed to like, do they even have the skill to do it? Who knows? Like
all of
it's
this is
a
made
number.
better by improving player skill. We are not doing a good enough job telling people when they're appropriately using their mitigation. We are not doing a good enough job telling them how much avoidable damage they're taking. There are a lot of things that an after action PvP style report would fix here, because a lot of the reasons people don't want to be healers this tier, based on the people who have told me they heal and they don't like it, or people who say they would never heal because of this, is that what we are asking of healers is to clean up mistakes that other people are making and not improving at. But I have to wonder if the people making the mistakes are even aware of just how many mistakes they're making, because we have made any form of mistake feedback documentation against the terms of service.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes.
So I know we've like wildly drifted subjects here, but like that's a whole other point of frustration, that like we're sitting here arguing over 610 versus 620 versus 630, but none of that matters if you are getting clipped by things and you are messing up your rotation and you are not using the utility tools provided to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you player skill is always going to be what in my mind should win out. I've made that argument even in terms of PvP gear scaling.
Help me get better then.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the biggest.
I admittedly suck. I'm telling you to help me get better, game.
Teach me, please.
Teach me.
Now, David says the problem with multiple pathways is that you have to actually be careful because if you make some pathways required, like he's heard WoW is, and I agree, but the pathway is required. Like if you want to get to that pathway, like that is like it's not required that you do all these things, but it's like in order to get the thing, you have to do this one thing. But in WoW, where you have to go do, I have to do A to do B to do C. Like I definitely agree. I advocate against that all the time. That's where I get frustrated with Phantasy Star, like Online 2, the new Genesis is like progression is heavily tied into you got to log in, you got to go do these things, you got to do these things, and then we're going to just kill your experience, and then you just got to come back tomorrow and do it again. You know, it's like this dip in and dip, like that's Lost where like oh yeah
that's where all of my pushback against this comes from, is that player power, people view player power like they do other systems. Like, why can't I just have access to all the cosmetics? Why can't I just have access to, but player power in particular, you have to be very careful distributing it, because the people who want to be powerful are only powerful relative to the people who are willing to put in the most time. And so the moment you go make power available from multiple sources to provide options, because it's always been added to games like World of Warcraft as more options. We're giving you more options, but it's not more options. It's more requirements. It's always more requirements. And so like one of the beautiful parts of Final Fantasy XIV is that player power is such a small, easy to understand, simplified mountain, and you are guaranteed to climb up every 8 months. The most you can ever be behind somebody is 8 months. And so it is, and maybe along that's the way there's steps.
Yeah, and maybe maybe options don't make sense in a vertical progression system in that regard. So like maybe that's just where like I'll never be satisfied, because adding in options ends up adding in the thing that I don't like in Phantasy Star, where like I get irritated by that, as opposed to like where a horizontal system makes sense because options are all leading you to the same theoretical cap, as opposed to like, well, if I have to go do this, I got to do that. So that's something I'm gonna kind of have to chew on in terms of vertical, because like again, it shouldn't come as a shock that I value horizontal much greater than I do a vertical kind of progression. That's how I actually play Destiny. I always talk about when I invest in Destiny, I invest in the horizontal content and not the vertical, because every year in Destiny, every expansion, everybody gets brought up to the same level. Like it's like you don't have to do anything, everything gets leveled up. You can choose to invest in it pre-expansion, but literally the next day the expansion goes live and everybody gets brought up. So it's like, yeah, that's why I was like, yeah, I always spend my time on horizontal. That's why I spend my time in 14 on horizontal, like leveling up my characters, my classes, and things like that. So it's like there's that clear bias that I bring.
1,000 likes to get him to try a horizontal game, guys. We're going to get him to EVE Online. We're going to get him into Guild Wars. We're going to get him into these lateral games.
I like those. I haven't actually played EVE. Maybe we'll do that.
They have a maximum depth, and then everything is just maximum depth over and over and over.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Guild Wars 2 pop.
They have their own cons.
That ties back to if Guild Wars was on, like they just brought it to Steam, and I was really hoping for cross. Like, I really want to see if I can get Guild Wars running on the Steam Deck. I know some people have got that rocking and rolling, and now Guild Wars 2 is phenomenal. I love what it does, and it's such a weird game because when we talk about it, I always talk about like, man, these games could really benefit from what Guild Wars has done. And it's like, why aren't you playing Guild Wars? It's like, every time I play it, I'm always like, why don't I play this game more? And I think it really boils down to like, I got the Razer trackpad, and I really try to commit in the gameplay, but hands down 14 cross-play, cross-save, and controller support win out every time. You're like, hey, Brian, you want to play 14 tonight or Guild Wars tonight? Oh, I'll play 14. And it's usually based off of like those key aspects, as opposed to like my frustration around like vertical progression over horizontal. It's ease of access. Ease of access, I think, wins out over any system design in my mind. What do you think about that before as your final thought?
I mean, now that I have a gaming PC and I do everything, and I'm always a keyboard and mouse player, my bar for ease of access is very, very low. And so, yes, I don't want to do something that requires a lot of weird work. Like you got to go install something and drag a bunch of config files. And I don't want all that. Mm-hmm. But in this day and age where everything's done through a launcher and everything's handled for me, ease of access is something that will keep me out of a game. But the number of games available to me that are easy to access the way I play games is enormous. And they're all rolled into things like Game Pass and stuff. So like even money hasn't become the gate anymore. And it's not because I suddenly got more money. It's because gaming got really cheap. When you look at things like the Steam sale and Game Pass, gaming is a very affordable hobby once your initial purchase is made. And so across the board, that like, yes, ease of access, but like I just have trouble picturing a future that's easier than now. I'm looking forward to it, but I have trouble picturing it because I don't know what, like, if you ask me what would make my gaming experience easier today, I don't really have a good answer for you. More time in the day? Can you make the days longer than 24 hours and I don't need extra sleep? Like I have trouble thinking of it. Yeah. You guys are saying Eve's hard to get into. I think you're focused on like knowing where Eve goes. As a brand new player, that's a very different experience. Getting into like Elite Dangerous or Eve, his first 20 hours,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, guys, I put in the Twitch in the chat. Continue your day with us over on Twitch if you can, if you want to. Also, if you have Amazon Prime, whether it's us or whatnot, spend those Bezos bucks each month on somebody who's putting out content that you enjoy. It's it's a free perk that you already have and doesn't literally cost you nothing. You've already spent the money on Amazon Prime anyway. So you get that free perk every month over on Twitch. It stops the ads. If that's annoying, I understand that. It also helps get you emotes and special roles in Discord and so much more. So whether it's with Work to Game or with anybody, we do thank you guys for those Prime subs. But also the thing we need more of is more lurkers over on Twitch. So if you can follow us over there, that's going to wrap us up for the show, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hopefully you guys enjoy your rest of your day and weekend. We'll be back here next week with more MMOs, news, discussions, and so much more. Until next time, guys, y'all have a great day and take care. All right, sweet. Julie's calling me.
Together? Scheduling. We play together when we can.
Yeah,
we play together when we can.
All right, 1 second. Julie's calling me, so I'm gonna dip out. There we go. On my way. Boop, 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 boop. I'm gonna hit end broadcast over here on the YouTube side, guys. Love y'all, and we will see you next time. And I'll be live tonight on Twitch if y'all want to come hang out and play some New World and talk about anything we talked about today.